Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IoTSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for IoTSSA, and co-hosting today's session is Tania Sheppard, a renowned channel marketing and communications professional. Welcome, Tania.
Thank you, Brian. It's lovely to be here. I'm really looking forward to today's session.
Awesome. And joining both of us today for our episode is Tyler Moffitt, Senior Threat Research Analyst for Webroot, with whom we will be discussing automated threat detection and instinctual security solutions. He plans to share insight on ways artificial intelligence and machine learning can help MSPs better protect their clients against modern day threats. Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, Tyler.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, good. Well, let's get the important things out of the way. Did you get away on any fun vacations, or at least get out of the office this summer and do something exciting?
Well, I have two kids, 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. We thoroughly enjoyed going to Elitch Gardens, which is basically just the Six Flags version here. I wouldn't say I had anything too memorable except putting the kids back in school after summer finished. That was definitely something we were both waiting for, because this is the first time we now have both kids in school. So big milestone for myself and my wife. We're real excited to sort of, feels like an end of an era, if you will, with one of the kids staying at home. So yeah, we're excited about the future.
Awesome.
That's lovely. I love it. I just sent my daughter off to college, Tyler, so we're in completely different areas, but I 100% understand. So if we could dive straight in here, I am going to sort of dummy back down and ask you some pedestrian questions, but that was such a massive introduction from Brian. Brilliant. But can we go down to basics and really get into what machine learning is, what artificial intelligence is, and how it relates to the industry a little bit?
Sure. So I'm going to just give you a high level. Sci-fi has a public misconception. It's not a disservice. We do not have robots with human-like brains or equal-like intelligence walking around the office advising our executives. We're not there yet. So AI is just machines automatically doing something in place of a human, okay? Any kind of automation is considered AI. So we have been using AI technically since the 50s, all right? Machine learning is artificial intelligence that is improving its own ability for its design task, okay? So machine learning right now is for data aggregation, okay? It helps find patterns in super large data sets, right? And another one you might hear about as well, because I know machine learning, artificial intelligence thrown around, deep learning, okay? So deep learning is a branch of machine learning that's based on a specific set of algorithms that attempt to mimic a neural process, okay? And deep learning is what allows us to be more human-like, at least in tasks, right? Being able to replicate a human-like process for that specific application. It only does one thing at a time, but it can do that one thing very human-like. I hope that little crash course into AI, ML, and deep learning helps a little bit.
It is. It's very helpful. It's pretty heady stuff when you think about it. Is machines taking over? We always go back to thinking of Terminator and all of those things as well. But
Skynet
is coming.
Actually, one of the names of one of our databases we use on the back end. Is just a joke, but you know.
Very cool. So how did these really, what sound like complicated processes to us mainstream people, work in security applications compared to what many MSPs are comfortable implementing and using today?
Right. So essentially the importance here is cloud, right? Having the heavy lifting and all of the gigantic amount of processing being done on the back end, on our end essentially, right? And then your client essentially being super lightweight and being able to translate all of that information and utilize all of that powerful information without having to rely on constant updates, right? You literally have a solution and an endpoint behind a single point of glass. The endpoint is so lightweight that all it's doing is really checking with the backend every new file, URL, IP, whatever type of data set we're trying to detect here. It just checks there. Have we ever seen this before or anything like it? And the anything like it is very key because polymorphism is rampant right now. And what I mean by polymorphism, if you don't know what that is that these threats, since the landscape is constantly changing, constant cat and mouse game, when threats are deployed to each individual machine, most of the time, it's a brand new iteration of the threat. What I mean is like a brand new signature or hash of the threat. You really rarely now, when you have a campaign, let's say Emotet, the most common botnet in existence, which actually just looks to be coming back. If you guys didn't know, Emotet was like the strongest botnet in existence since 2014, rampant in 2017, 2018. Most of 2019 went dark in June, but it looks like it's coming back. Anyways, I digress. Most of the malware dropped from that is designed specifically to drop a brand new executable, never before seen, with a whole bunch of hashes changed up. So that way it's defeating AV, right? It's considered a brand new threat, never before seen. And that's how the current landscape is designed. Each individual machine you may infect, you may have a campaign that's dropping technically the same type of malware as far as its purpose and design and the command and control servers it's communicating to, but each different sample dropped on each different machine will be different. So example, let's say you have an organization that's 150 computers. If you have a campaign that hits one of those machines and wants to spread to all 150 computers, all 150 computers will technically receive a different type of threat that needs to be detected. And so this is where you require proactive solution, right? So we encounter our giant, massive scale machine learning and powerful contextual analysis engine. We classify and score over 2 million unique executable files. I'm talking just about executables each and every day. And so that's quite a bit we have to determine. They come to us as unknowns and we've got to determine them good or bad, right? And we only have 27 guys worldwide. Okay, and so obviously we're not able to determine these files one by one with one human looking at each individual file going, is this bad or is this good? No, we're looking at a whole bunch of data points, right? Which essentially we're creating rules off of. We're creating machine learning and artificial intelligence, essentially algorithms, models, if you will, that we're training each and every day to get better. And we've been doing this for years. It takes a while. So definitely want to give caution to people out there who hear machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's a big buzzword right now for a lot of security people out there, but be careful of ones that are startups, only been around a year or so or 2 years and using machine learning and artificial intelligence. I mean, that takes a long time. We have literally been training ours for over 7 years now, and it took a long time before we're like, okay, buddy, we're going to let you go now and determine some files, do a good job. There's no way that was ready within a year or two. I'm sure I've talked quite a bit there, but that's sort of the importance there is that it's lightweight and leveraged somewhere else. You don't have to rely on constant updates, making sure that it's checking all the time. Like literally, you never have to worry. There's never any updates to do with our solution. Any new file you encounter or new URL or IP is essentially checked in real time before you ever would have resolved the address or before the file would ever even execute. Hope that helps.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Oh, thank you. It's fascinating stuff, and it's quite heady. My question is, if you've got companies that have sort of traditional security solutions implemented currently, they have, from their standpoint, got the entire environment taken care of. How does this integrate, and how do these technologies work together, or is this an independent solution?
Right. So it depends. We recommend a layered solution. All right. So our traditional endpoint comes with multiple layers, and it's all behind a single point of glass. So for most of the audience here, MSPs, small, medium-sized businesses, it's going to be a single pane of glass that you're going to be using, your interface, where you can do everything from literally just your login through the browser. You can see all your machines. You can deploy to all of these machines through there. Whether it's endpoint protection, you can see anytime it's run a scan, all the different types of threats it may have detected, any actions required, but even beyond just security solutions, because multi-layered recommendation here is if you want to have deployed the DNS protection or secure anywhere training. Training is a huge, huge factor that you want to make sure you have, and being able to manage all those things in one single pane of glass, one login is really useful instead of having to worry about multiple different tired solutions. Because I know people just, you can't just buy one product and expect 100% protection. There is no silver bullet. And anyone who promises you 100% protection, we're 100%, don't listen to that person. Just walk the other way, right? I'll never tell you that. And that's why we suggest a layered solution, because, just to give you a quick rundown, sort of a coffee filter analogy, most of the time, if you're going to be infected, you have to have a user click on something, right? And I would say a little over 95% of cases, a user has to click on something. So user education would be the first layer right there, making sure they're educated, right? But that's going to fail. Users are going to fail. That's a fact of life. That's why we get infected. So then they're going to click on something, which means they're trying to resolve a URL or an IP. And that's where our DNS protection comes in. That's in a separate layer that can stop it as soon as you're clicking it, right? As soon as you were to try and resolve that URL or IP, most cases it's going to be phishing, which are really difficult to tell. And let's say that fails, right? Nothing's 100%. So that means you actually are resolving the URL or IP. You're downloading that file. So as soon as the file is downloaded, before any execution, we basically take a look at topical information of the file and we shoot it on over to our back end that's running all this machine learning and artificial intelligence that we're constantly training. That will be able to tell us, hey, look, we've seen this before, or a campaign just like it. We know it's Emotet, we know it's ransomware, we know whatever it's scripts, whatever is going on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to detect it right there. And let's say that were to fail, meaning you got 3 layers already failed, and it were to actually able to execute. Then we have detections on heuristics. Now, detections on heuristics is basically, I would consider legacy AV. So I'm sure maybe Norton or McAfee or Kaspersky, I probably shouldn't be naming any vendors, but they're usually a blacklist on execution. We're looking purely at actions the file is trying to commit on the box, and then from that standpoint, detecting. Well, we have that as well, but we had 3 more layers before that, right? And so this is sort of our approach at a multi-layer. That's what's sort of our philosophy, is that you can get much better protection with a much more lightweight client that doesn't slow down your computer. I'm sure we've all had slowdowns or updates that have caused a problem, right? Or you'll say you're running a scan, and you're like, wow, I can't even open this Excel document because it's running a scan. There's a third-party testing organization out there called Passmark. We basically, we've been showcased on theirs, and we come first place literally every single time as far as installation size, network throughput, the amount of memory used, during scan, during idle, all those sort of types of information you would want to know if you're deploying, this endpoint onto a whole bunch of different computers that, have a huge degree of variation in hardware and capability. I know that the laptop I'm currently dealing with right now is the green laptop that I don't do any research on, and this is one of the oldest machines there is. And so it's good to have an endpoint that's super lightweight, or it really slow it down.
So Tyler, obviously the MSP community, is very technical. They can understand and grasp, I think, all the things going on in the security space, especially the threats and the risk factor when you talked about the end users in particular. You can't stop them. They're going to make mistakes. So looking at the MSPs, they understand the risks. Their clients, on the other hand, if they haven't been attacked or haven't gotten one to this point, they're a little more reluctant to invest additionally. I guess my question is, how can MSPs get their clients to care about these innovations, or to that other factor is maybe they shouldn't, maybe they should just be implementing these. What are your thoughts on getting all of these great things pushed down to where it really matters, the SMB businesses?
Right, yeah, so great question. Why should the small, medium business care? Well, I would think, keeping just abreast of the news media, you would see that SMBs are literally the #1 target for criminals. It's only gotten worse. Ever since sort of the RDP type of attack, and I'm gonna give a little crash course on that. This is sort of an environment set up as well. So this is also something the MSPs need to be aware of, but also the IT admin in charge of the small, medium-sized business. So a lot of the times in the small, medium-sized business, you've got one person that's in charge of IT, or it's someone's, in super small businesses, it's one person's half job. Maybe they work in sales or accounting. They're just the most tech savvy, right? Well, that person's best guess usually isn't gonna be the best way to go about it. So RDP is remote desktop protocol. Everybody has, I'm sure, experienced either through remoting on someone else's computer or have someone remote onto your own computer. Super convenient, super productive. Every business should utilize it, and that's the thing I'm going for. However, you should also lock it down. So the #1 type of attack we see on small, medium-sized businesses, this is also coincides with government municipalities getting destroyed recently because they haven't set it up correctly. So Microsoft Windows has RDP built into it since Windows XP and up. So, and when you flip it on, you've got 2 major problems. Just flipping it on, everything works as intended. And a lot of you go, this is great, I'm good, I'm set it and forget it. That's where the problem relies. You have 2 big problems in the default settings. One is you're open on port TCP 3389 through the RDP connection. That means anybody can scan and try and connect to your computer. Right now, I could go to shodan.io. It's a nice website, great tool, and you can scan everybody using an RDP connection. and you can connect to that computer. Now, it will ask when you connect to that computer for the username and password. And this is where a lot of IT admins who maybe aren't educated enough think that this is good. I have good password policies. This is secure enough. No one's going to get through. Well, here's where the second default with Microsoft comes in. And that's there's unlimited number of login attempts allowed. And there's no automatic shutout after 5. There's no note or alert sent to any admin. And so for criminals, this is easy. This is, you download a brute force tool like Brute 2.1. You feed in a common username and password list that's millions of lines long that you bought on the dark web for like $10, and you let it sit there. It may take a few days, may take a few weeks, but you will crack it because everybody's username and password, as much as they feel are secure, are not. Most people just have one word that they add a few little numbers onto and add maybe the year or change it up every 90 days, whatever it is. It's been well proven and well established. There's tons. I don't really need to convince anybody that their passwords and usernames are not secure because it's already been proven. And so what happens then if a criminal remote desktops into a machine? From there, it's game over. They're going to evaluate the network, see what type of machine they have, right? What type of permissions they have. Great if they get an admin or not. And they can elevate their own permissions. And in some cases, what we see, because it's really easy to deploy malware in that sense, because they just disable what security solution you have, disable your backups, and then drag and drop onto the desktop their payload. Double click it, wait for you to find it. And this is how so many organizations are hit. It's so common too. And the funny thing is too, when it comes to remediation from this, I hear about this so many times at conferences, is people will just assume if they're hit through this way, that someone just clicked something on phishing, right? They're like, oh, someone just clicked something on phishing. We got to watch out, guys. Let's just reimage this box, right? And so they reimage the box. The downtime is like a day or two or something, but they don't realize that they came in through RDP. It was an incorrect best practice. They didn't follow it. And so when they reimage the box, they re-image literally the same username, the same password, the same RDP, and the criminals the next day remote right back in. And plenty of governments and businesses have been embarrassed this way purely because they weren't aware of this, right? And so that's the story I would definitely tell your small, medium-sized business that they need to be aware of, because beyond just pushing down, hey, look, here's your training solution, here's your security solution, here's what we recommend, for backup or whatever, all those types of offerings they propose. There's something else that I recommend, and that's best practices. And so, we actually have a training course that's going to be released end of this month that is focused purely for the IT admin and for the MSP. That's part of our Secure Anywhere training. That's designed purely to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, because you are responsible for more than just, I buy the security solution. It's up to them. Now, there's more you got to do as well. Absolutely.
I love that you talked about training, because that's a huge part of the MSP community, is making sure that we as a community make sure they're trained. The adoption rate is high, because as we know, that's the thing with any kind of a software solution. So excellent about that. And I'm sure we can hear more. I have a question, assuming that lovely word that we can communicate the problem to the SMBs so they are finally understanding the security ramifications. How do we put forth the proactive versus reactive? Because I'm thinking to them myself, they're thinking, I've got these solutions in place, I'm protected. How do we really put forth this serious proactivity, utilizing the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, this powerhouse of data that we can, access? How do we explain to them that that's more important?
I'll give you a story here that explains fully why you need proactive over reactive. So let's get phishing, for example. Number one way people really get infected or compromising themselves by clicking on something, the users, right? So let's say just a few years ago, you're emailed either from Google, from Apple, from PayPal, whatever, and a link saying there's been terms or changes to your account or a charge, whatever. This is fraudulent. It doesn't matter. You click on the link. You click on the link, and you're presented with what looks like Google, what looks like Apple, what looks like the PayPal login, right? Indistinguishable, right? And you're about to enter your information, but you look at the top, you look at the URL, and you see, okay, that's not PayPal.com, that's not Google.com, this looks sketch. I'm not gonna enter my information. And so you don't enter it. And then you give yourself a pat on the back because you just evaded phishing and you think you did a great job. And that's fine and dandy, but we're talking about now. Changes have already happened right now. So right now, our analysis and data has found that 40% of phishing or malicious URLs are hosted on benign or good domains. So now what we're talking about is literally same scenario. Your email, you get the same email, terms of changes, there's been a charge, whatever it is. You click on the link. It looks just like PayPal. It looks just like Google or Chase.com, right? And then you see the login looks identical. Then you give your check. You look at the URL, and then you see the URL says paypal.com/whatever or google.com/whatever, right? In that scenario, how would you know? You would feel that's legitimate, and you would likely enter your information. So they're already keyed onto this. The criminals already know this is sort of a little test that people give themselves. And so that's what they're doing. They're now hijacking benign subdomains, hijacking some, and they only do it for like 4 hours. They will literally hijack a good address, google.com/whatever, paypal.com/whatever. They will host their phishing page. We're talking for like 4 to 8 hours, and then they'll take it offline. And in that scenario, when you're presented with that, how would you know? Even myself, I wouldn't know. And so the only way we are able to know is because my real-time, anti-phishing shield is going to actually block that connection as soon as I even click the link. It's going to tell me it's bad. And that's sort of a real-life story example where I wouldn't, as a threat researcher, just because I'm looking at the domain here, I wouldn't even know, right? And so that's where ML and AI come into play to tell us, hey, look, the way in which this website was brought up or injected or whatever's going on, that's actually our URL and IP guys, our Bright Cloud team. I sit right next to them, but I work in the file determination. So my expertise is executable files, but they know what's up and they know how to make sure that, our models are be able to determine that. And we have a great efficacy with stopping those in real time. And I would say it probably is the best example or story of why you need to rely on proactive. Because on a reactive measure where you have static blacklists that are updated once or twice a day of what's good or what's bad as far as websites aren't going to work because those websites, they're only active for like 4 hours. We found some that are only active for an hour or a certain number of attempts, meaning they'll go live and as soon as they get 50,000 credentials, they'll go offline. And that could only take 30 minutes if it's a successful enough campaign. And so that's sort of, I would say, the best example or story I have as to why you need to work on proactive solution.
So cyber criminals are getting not only smarter, but faster with how they change their tactics.
Absolutely.
Which kind of brings me to another topic that's relevant to this, I think, is the IoT factor and innovation. So I was reading through one of your blogs the other day, which, by the way, I recommend to our readers, go check out Tyler's blog on webroot.com. But I'm stuck on that IoT toaster example that you gave. It's cool, but it brands a date and weather on your toast in the morning so that you're
emojis
fully
if you
prepared
want
for the
to.
day.
I know.
Oh, the emoji one. Yeah. I mean, this stuff is really cool. And while I'm not sure the security implications of, the toaster, perhaps, MSP should be concerned about with some of the innovations their customers may bring in the workplaces is there's new things coming in all the time. How do these technologies help with those innovations that are coming that may be considered more dumb devices, sensors, things like that?
Right. Yeah. So one thing that's as far as just from a criminal standpoint, right, the appeal to IoT, regardless of the fact that, the main problem with IoT with some of these devices coming out like a smart salt shaker or these smart refrigerators, smart toasters, you name it, smart garage door openers. There are more IPs, there are more chips. As far as appeal to criminals, they can act as a botnet command and control service to push malware down to people. As long as they function and do their one job that you need it to, which is your smart thermostat, it still could be a relay for delivering malware. Or in some cases, which we've seen, proof of concept at least, not necessarily in the wild, mining cryptocurrency. So mining cryptocurrency using people's computers, laptops, and desktops has been a thing for a while, but now they're getting it to work on routers, smart TVs, Xboxes, PlayStations, hell, your refrigerator that can post to Instagram. If it can resolve a web page that runs JavaScript, it can also mine cryptocurrency or even just a chip. Like there are so many types of avenues for criminals to hijack these devices, and it's so easy to do because vendor regulation is like non-existent. And a lot of these devices people want to buy and they want to throw in DVRs, IP cameras, it just scales from there beyond like, smart garage door openers, all these things. There's almost no security vetting in the products at all. Because right now we're sort of in the wonder stage of, look what we can do with this internet connected device that we could have done with our hands much faster, but this is cooler. And it's designed purely on a functional basis. They are designed as cheaply as possible, just to be functional, get out the door, sell. there is zero security vetting, and there's zero vendor regulation. So there's no real motivation for them to put any security in there as well. So a lot of these devices, especially the ones you may bring into work that you think are cool, they have problems like hard-coded passwords. Now, if you guys don't know what hard-coded password is, that means, let's say you buy, because it's very common, people have like really nice IoT devices like your Nest thermostats or certain IP cameras that are really highly rated that have good security, you know. They'll buy a cheap version, like a Chinese version, if you will, that's 1/3 of the price, but the same functionality. Well, when you actually get that device and you open up the box and bring it all out and you have your instructions, the instructions are going to have a password there that's like printed on there. That's the same password for everybody who bought that same model right there. So that means if that criminal, you know, just buys one of those devices, he now has the same password as everybody else who bought that device. And we even saw that actually, this was fully, as far as an attack that happened in real life, this was end of 2016, it's not even that far ago, the Mirai botnet. Maybe you guys remember that, not quite not. It shut down the Dyn network. And Dyn is a hosting service that served Twitter, Amazon, Netflix. It shut those down for like a little while. Everybody was, then it got national news, right? So this Mirai botnet literally was just comprised of, I think, around 100 common usernames and passwords for routers, IP cameras, DVRs, smart TV, anything you could, right? And it just logged into them and made them zombies. So they still worked as far as routing your internet technology or filming and recording your outside, you know, doorbell. But at nighttime, when it was the wait time for the Russians or whoever was in charge of it, they would use it to commit DDoS attacks. And it's very, very, very successful because DDoS for hire is quite a lucrative business for criminals. So it's definitely something to watch out for, and just caution and make sure that if you are buying these IoT devices, you know, make sure they have a security implementation in place, like they're encrypted, or if they're not, like implement a DNS protection at the router level, so that way anything from the router that's assigning an IP address has protection there to make sure that nothing, you know, malicious or malicious IP address is trying to send commands to it. That would be my recommendation. But it's going to be a crazy future, that's for sure.
Great advice and good best practices there, and I love it. What do you think about what comes next, Tyler? We've talked a lot about sort of the basic history and this increase in attacks and the sophistication level of these cyber criminals. How do you see the future?
So remember the WannaCry NotPetya, I'm sure we all do, where they used exploits and were able to spread to machines previously not thought infectable. We're talking about machines that technically didn't have internet access, but they were connected to a local network, where just in that local network, one machine that had access to the internet, let's say in a hospital environment, the receptionist checking email, they have actual internet, they would be the central back door or the initial infector to infect everything else, and infecting blood test machines, x-rays, all these machines that were previously never ever patched or updated and never really connected to the external network were hit. And so that's a big problem. So I expect we're going to see more stuff like that. They're already prepping us for Blue Keep to happen. But I also think MMS, they're going to find a way, because we've never seen some nasty sort of ransomware on phones yet. We've seen lock screens, which act like a ransomware. They threaten you like they're a ransomware, but they're really not. They're just a lock screen. You can put your phone in safe mode and remove them. But I think we're going to see developments there. We're going to see actual full-fledged ransomware lock you out of your phone and ask for money there as well. The IoT the development, I think we're going to see more hijacks there. Honestly, I think the situation is just going to get worse until either vendor regulation is thrown in, where they actually make it a priority and part of people's budget when it comes to designing these IoT devices. Also, crypto mining. The fact that you can mine cryptocurrency and all these different devices in your house and you wouldn't even know about it, and it doesn't really cost, they call it a victimless crime, if you will, because no, they're not stealing your data, they're not compromising you, they're not taking anything from you, they're literally just using the micro CPU cycles of all these devices to mine a little bit of cryptocurrency. They're not making much, we're talking like a quarter or 50 cents a day per device, but that adds up when you've got 1 million devices. In fact, just recently they had a botnet takedown that had over 1 million devices that were mining cryptocurrency. And so 1 million devices at 50 cents a day does actually add up quite a bit. And so, yeah, I think the future, we're just going to see more different types of attacks from more different vectors. We're going to be tackling more different types of devices. And until there's either change in the space through regulation or an actual, I would say, awareness in the community where people are like, well, I actually need to watch out for that. Because right now, everybody just doesn't really consider it. We're, like I said, we're in the wonder stage where they're like, look how cool this is. I can open my garage from my phone. Well, when you set that up and you see the Bluetooth and you're connecting it, the password was 0000 to connect. Someone else right outside your house could connect to that garage door opener and open your garage. I mean, there's mountains of problems.
Well, you present a lot of opportunities on the other side for MSPs from that last part of the discussion, besides scaring the socks off me. Kind of makes me want to become Amish at this point, honestly, get rid of all the technology and walk away.
I don't have any Google Home or Alexas, none of that.
Yeah,
none of that. My wife wanted it, and I was like, no way.
Yeah, you're making a lot of people scared, I think. But I could go on talking to you all day. This is great stuff, but unfortunately, we're coming to a close. But do you have any final thoughts to share with our audience today before we close out the episode?
Absolutely. Educate yourself. Definitely beyond just the standard run an education course. No, I really mean educating yourself, looking out there, because just because you're an IT admin or an MSP advisory doesn't mean you know all different types of threats. I'm learning more and more every day as time goes on, especially with the cryptocurrency mining. The fact that that works on basically every device was very sort of eye-opening to me. Like, wow, they could pull off massive campaigns now, and it doesn't require any consent. Like with ransomware, requires your consent that you're infected, you've been owned, I have to pay these criminals. When mining through cryptocurrency requires no consent, they just take it from you, and you're stuck with an expensive power bill at the end of the day. And educate yourself is really, really important. Educating your employees, like, I can't tell you enough how important it is, beyond just the once a year obvious training course or the once a year phishing simulation. I recommend doing at least once a month. You really, really, really have to, at least once a month, phish your employees or your customers. Send campaigns out there that they're unaware of, because you want to find out who's falling for it. Because you know that if every single month the same person is clicking on the link and entering their information, you know, for a real world example, that person, if it ever does happen, they're going to be phished. They're going to give away the credentials. So how much permissions do they have? Are they potentially giving away the keys to the kingdom? These are the big pitfalls that happen in these small to medium-sized businesses, and they can be devastating to the point where they can literally shut you out of business depending on what type of data is taken or how long it takes you to come up from this devastation, like loss of business, loss of productivity, loss of brand recognition. I mean, it adds up. So definitely take a look. We have a webroot.com/resources. We have tons of information constantly coming out where you can sort of keep yourself abreast of the threat landscape and as things evolve.
That is awesome. So on behalf of IOTSSA, we'd like to thank Tyler Moffitt of Webroot for joining us today. Also, thank you, Tania, for stepping in.
Fantastic. I just thought to myself, MSPs, be the mystery diners of the cybersecurity industry and go and check out your clients, make sure they're safe. Thank you, Tyler. Please come back. We'd love to hear more about the channel program and training and adoption. Great stuff.
It's very good. And thanks to all of you for listening to our podcast today. As always, we encourage you to check out all the great channel cybersecurity content on IOTSSA's website. That's IoTSSA.com. And we hope you have a safe, profitable, and enjoyable day. Thanks for joining us.